colors danced as Scar pushed Skittles across the desk. There wasn't anything she could do, and that was infuriating and boring. She tried to sleep during the night, but hadn't gotten anything. She looked out the window of the room that the Profithians had given her, and morning was well on its way. Still no sign of anything. Nothing from Darren, from G. It was killing her. The room was nice. The Profithians were a lot more hospitable now that she was there under Darren's terms. But she still hated the thought of being in the middle of the Profithian empire. As she sat, she couldn't help but think about the fact that she had brought G here. She had convinced him to come to these other worlds, and none of this would have happened without her. And she didn't completely trust Darren and everything that he said, but the more she thought about it, the more sense that he made. She just wanted to see G back safely. A call came on her mobile and she answered it. It was Darren. He said, "We've got something. Be ready to go in 2 minutes." She hung up and swept the Skittles, popped a few in her mouth and stuck the rest back in her pocket, directing them to the food portion of her pockets. And she opened the door, was waiting in the hallway as Darren passed by. She joined in stride with him, and as they continued on their way, he was wearing his same off-white uniform as before, silvery lines along it, and yeah, he looked official in it, but not from Earth. It was definitely odd, though. Nowadays, what wasn't odd is the earthly things that caught her off guard. They continued down the hallway, and Darren directed them across a sky bridge into another building. As they crossed through, she saw the city around her, the streets that went every which way, and lights all throughout the city, and plants along the streets that grew in every direction. It was so strange. The whole city was just bizarre. As they walked, Darren chuckled. Said, "What, first time you've ever seen a Profithian city?" She shrugged, and yeah. I said, ignore the anti-gravity, and it's just like Earth. This is basically New York. And she said, "Stop trying to flirt with me, Darren." And I said, "But I am twice your age, at least. I'm just trying to get my mind off of Reggie. I don't want to think about where he's at, what he's going through. And I know you don't want that either." That she could agree with. They crossed the sky bridge and went through a building that was a more sterile white. She was obviously in the official buildings around here. As they were passing through the building, she saw through windows another room that had a humanoid pod, too small for a Profithian, and the inside of which was covered with crystals. Some green like the crystals that she had seen, but others of every other kind of color. And all of the crystals sharp and pointing inward toward where a person would be kept. She said, "What is that?" "That's a damping pod," Darren explained. So that's a place where you can put a sire to keep them from siring. At this, Scar stopped in the middle of the hallway. And she said, "You expect me to work with you to put G in that?" "No." Darren stopped and turned around. And he said, "I never approve of using the damping pod. And it is very rarely used. I've only seen it used once. And we're going to do everything that we possibly can to keep G out of that. I don't want him in there either. And the sooner we can take care of this, the sooner we can stop that from happening. He turned around and continued on his way. And Scar finally continued on after him. They eventually came outside of the building and crossed a walking platform that took them to another building. They went to the side of the building, and through the entrance, there were guards along the sides that were wearing uniforms similar to Darren's, though not nearly as flashy. His was obviously higher rank than most of the others. As they continued on, Darren said, "Oh, they didn't get you breakfast, did they? Have you eaten anything yet?" And the Scar said, "No, I usually wait until lunch. I've got food for myself." And Darren looked at her and he said, "You're going to need energy if you're going to be doing what we're doing. I'm not going to have you on my team if you're not ready to go." And he reached into his uniform and pulled out a small case and opened up. It looked like it had protein bars wrapped in a paper of some kind. And he handed her one of them. She did take it. She said, "I'm fine, really." He returned the case to his uniform, but pulled off some of the paper and took a bite. "See? Not poisoned. Take it. You need energy." She reluctantly took it just to appease him and experimentally took a bite. And it was a lot better than she expected. She was going to just stick it back, but she was a little bit hungrier than she told herself and took another bite when Darren wasn't looking. The two of them finally came to a room with two large doors, again with guards in front. And Darren nodded to them and the guards opened the doors for him. And they came into a scene of absolute commotion. Profithians this way and that. There were computer screens all along and people shouting and whispering rushedly, and her earbuds were completely overwhelmed. They walked in, and the first thing that Scar saw, other than the absolute commotion, were the massive screens along the front of the wall. And almost every single one showed wreckage of a city that had been absolutely destroyed. Some of them were in darkness and were lit by green lighting. Others seemed to be showing real-time footage as it surveyed absolute desolation of what must have been a metropolis before that. Some of the shots showed fuzzy, but very obviously G, his gray mesh suit, amber crystals glowing on his shoulders and down his front, and standing over this thing, eyes closed, as if he were breathing in the morning air. She said, "Darren, you can't expect me to believe that G did that." Darren didn't give her he didn't listen to her words at all. He jumped the railing and landed on the floor a few feet below and pushed himself forward to what must have been one of the main people at a main computer, and he started talking with them. Scar couldn't hear what he said, but she made her way around the railing and came up to where they were, to where she could hear. And the Profithian didn't translate very well through her earbuds, but she picked at him, asking what in the world was happening, how this had happened all night, and the Manaya had no idea. He said, "We have protocol for this. What is going on?" And they mumbled a response that her earbuds weren't able to get out. Everything was so rushed and so frantic. And he said, "Well, where is he now?" The Profithian raised their hands and started typing into the computer. A few seconds later, another shot came onto the screen, of a white canyon, and as zoomed in, they could see two forms around a campfire. One of them G, one of them Blaze. She thought, how did he get here? The Pokemon. Darren slapped a device down and he said, I want the coordinates. Get them to me. And he turned and went to Scar and he said, G is a lot further along than I thought he was. We need to get to him, and we need to get to him now and take care of him. And Scar said, but you can't honestly believe that G did all of that in the time that we've seen him. And Darren said, that's what's on the screens. The refugees of the city are right here. I can't not believe it. I've heard of stories like this. It's never been this bad. He said, we need to stop G. It's not him that's doing this. It's the force of destiny that takes him over. And that's what we need to stop before he gets stronger. One of the Profithians came up and handed him the device, and he took it, slipped it into his pocket. And he led Scar up to a less populated area of the room where they could talk a little bit more freely. And Scar said, well, why... how does this happen in the first place? There are so many seers. This has to have happened in the past. And Darren said, my job is to make sure there are no seers, so that this doesn't happen. Scar said, so you just kill them all? He said, no, they live in another world. When you have multiple sires together, they can't sire. If they, only one can feed off of the energy at a time, otherwise they get hurt and they can't do it. And Scar said, well then why don't you just get one of them over here, get him next to G, to stop all this? And Darren said, that'd be nice, but it takes time to adjust, and we don't have any that are adjusted, or this would happen. There is one seer that lives on the world of truth, but he is kept under damping, and he's not coming out. I mean, we could take G to him, but we'd have to sedate him anyway, and that brings things far too close to the terms of the prophecy for my liking. No, we need to go and we need to stop him ourselves. Scar said, siring is basically just like seeing the future, right? And Darren said, it's a lot more complicated than that, but I mean, yes. And Scar said, one of my abilities allows me to see a few seconds into the future. Do you think that would be able to stop him from siring? That made Darren think for a second. I said, that's a really good idea. Absolutely something that we should try alongside everything else. He said, would you be willing to do that? And Scar said, yeah, I could see what it would do. At this point in their conversation, Darren turned and bowed down to the floor, knuckles on the ground, and arm crossed over his chest, as four Profithians came up, and they were wearing very official, not extravagant, but nice clothing. And Scar didn't bow. She wasn't going to bow to the people that made all this happen. But they began to talk, and she was only able to catch snippets. Either they were just talking very formally or what, but her earbuds could not pick it out. But she heard them saying that this problem could not be trusted to Earth, that Ceridian is Sinaya Manaya and he has control of this mission. All decisions are his. And watching Darren's face, she could tell that he did not like whatever was going on. The three of the Profithians left, and the shortest one with the least fancy clothing, his was quite similar to Darren's, stayed. And he gave Darren permission to rise. It was a lot easier to understand him. And he said, I may be Sinaya, but only when I need to be. He said, this is your mission. I will follow your lead. I'll be here to be a good shot. And Darren thanked him as he put his hand on his shoulder. He said, thank you, Ceridian. It'll be good to work with you again. And Ceridian said, what's the plan? Darren turned to Scar and said, she is. She says she has an ability that might stop siring, and I think it's worth trying. We'll pack whatever else we can. We'll bring powder, and we're going to bring him in, stop him, slow him down, and get control of him. And Ceridian said, all right, this is your mission. Darren said, all right, are you ready to go to try this out? We've got the coordinates. And Scar said, I'll need a bigger supply before I'm ready to head out and fight for any extended amount of time. I can be back in half an hour. And Darren said, all right. In that case, we'll meet back at the landing pads where they had been the night before. And Scar said, all right, I'll meet you there. And turned, ready to do her part to try to bring G in. End of chapter 4.